Hello and welcome to B.T.F.O. Today we're going to be talking about Homestead, the new Angel Studios movie, um, which I suppose they've got another one coming out pretty quickly with, why am I forgetting his name? Guy from Chernobyl. I was just kind of surprised to see him in one of their projects. I haven't really seen him a lot else, but glad to, I guess. So this is the only Angel Studios film that I've actually seen, at least that I'm aware of, because I know they made Sound of Freedom and Sound of, what was it? Home? Or Sound of Hope, I think was the other one. But they're actually just located here in Utah. And so it was kind of interesting watching Homestead because it was filmed all in Davis County. So a lot of the locations were very familiar to me, which was kind of funny, but on the other hand, it may, the movie probably works a lot better for people who have no idea, where, things in America are. So the plot of the movie basically starts off with there's a couple people. I don't know what language they were speaking, but a non-English language. They both weren't white. But they're on this boat outside of LA, and they have a nuclear bomb somehow that they set off. And then from there, supposedly there's a major power loss after that, where everyone's trying to evacuate the LA area and get away from the fallout of the bomb, which is another thing that I think they greatly overappreciate, how much fallout a single bomb would have like that. But then we get later in the movie, they reference that the East Coast, apparently Russia, through a cyber attack, wiped out a lot of power on the East Coast. But then the movie, one of the areas that I think it is really weak in is that it rapid fire kind of introduces a lot of different characters and groups of characters. And this might be because there is a Homestead the series, which you can pay to watch. I'm not sure what streaming service they're teamed up with, or if it's on their own thing. But essentially, a lot of these groups of characters we won't come back to for a good 10, 20 minutes throughout the movie. And a lot of them don't have a whole lot of screen time, and so it just kind of seems okay, we can probably take a lot of these groups out and then do some more actual character development, because there's not a whole lot of character development in the movie. Like, really, for the most part, you've just got the main character, Mr. Was it Reed? Maybe it was Reed. But whoever runs the quote-unquote homestead. And I did think it was funny, because so they say that the homestead is in the Rockies, which makes sense for where it actually is, because it's a real home. It's very nice. I think it's the largest home, at least this side of Utah. But that was part of our driver's ed course, was the teacher I had. He had us drive past it just to point it out to us. It's also fairly far north, at least in North Salt Lake, and up quite a few hills. But so they have it in the Rockies, and like that makes sense. And they use like several shots of the Great Salt Lake, which is pretty unmistakable because of how, like, the edge of the lake, when you look down on it from the mountain, it kind of peters off into like just a bunch of puddles. And then of course you've got mountains on the other side of the lake. So it's pretty, you can't really pass it off for being the ocean unless you're saying that, like, oh, you're a character coming from the ocean and you're in the Salt Lake filming other places. But because like the other end of the Salt Lake, the Salt Flats, they use that in movies all the time. Like Pirates of the Caribbean 3, where Davy Jones stands in the puddle. But it's kind of interesting because then they'll end up calling it Oakland, which it's like, no, Oakland is California. Like that's not in the Rockies, and that's also like not by the Salt Lake. So I don't know if maybe the guy who owns the house, maybe he told them that, like, whoa, you can't say this is Utah, like, whoa, like, but I don't know, I just thought it was kind of weird that it's like, why call it Oakland, like, but then that also gets into one of the other major problems that I had with it was, so for being promised as a post-apocalyptic film, or even just like, an apocalyptic film, right? Like the apocalypse is like just starting, it's happening. They do a really poor job of conveying that, because like we have the nuke and like fires and devastation in LA and everyone like getting out of there, and that's fine. But then they, like, once they reach the homestead, everything's just fine. And there are a few things in the movie where I think they're really low effort. Where like there are establishing shots of the homestead, which I find really weird because there are angles that you can like shoot that house from that you wouldn't capture the shot of the valley below, but several nighttime shots they chose to like do an establishing shot that captures the Salt Lake Valley at night, which is all lit up. And then like pretty late in the film they try and have a time jump where they say that it's been 30 days since the blackout, and it's like, well, hold on, like like that's not a, like, that wasn't a blackout. Like they've had power this whole time. Like you're not actually telling me that everyone's like had like, all these generators and stuff. Like that's a little far-fetched. But then, like, they also have the city government is trying to tax them, which I just found really bizarre, because it's like, well, so in America, that's not how the city government works. Like, at least, like, maybe places like New York or something where the city is super big, maybe it works like that. But at least here in Utah, where I think it is clearly supposed to be set, maybe in the fictional city of Oakland, Utah, that's just not how it works. The state taxes you and then gives that money to the cities based on their population. And like the cities can do other things for revenue. But you don't see city officials go walking up to people's houses and being like, hey, you still have to like pay your taxes, right? I don't care if a nuke went off, like you still gotta pay your taxes. And also I want all these guns inventoried. Which again I thought was really funny, because he's like, oh, you better have paperwork for all these, and it's like, no, again, that's like, you don't need to have paperwork for all of them. Like, it's on the state at that point to prove that you have an illegally, like, obtained firearm. But unless they see that you've, like, scratched off the serial number, there's really no way for them to just, like, look at a gun in your house and go, hey, like, you better have paperwork for that. It's like, no, that's not how that works. But, and then that character of the city official ends up, like, coming back near the last, like, 10 minutes of the movie to be, like, the primary antagonist. And he shows up with a SWAT team. And this is supposed to be like a month into the apocalypse. And it's like, okay, so if you're able to get a SWAT team together, like from your like small town, to go to like this super rich guy's house, yeah, guys, like you might need to actually consider that there might not be an apocalypse going on. That like, if society is in that good of shape, then yeah, like there's not really, because they keep talking about like, oh, we gotta protect ourselves from like roaming bandits and like starving people that are gonna do all these mean things to us. And the film is unwilling to show like what any of those mean things might be. The closest we get is when we introduce another group of characters. Because so in the beginning of the film, we introduce the Homestead family, which is husband, wife, and their daughter. And then we also introduce his sister and her family, which is her 2 kids and a dog. I'm pretty sure that's it. Yeah, 2 kids and a dog. Maybe 3 kids and a dog. And then she calls her husband, who's another character. And then there's also a security guy, his wife, and their 2 kids. And then you've got security guys, like, he's mainly got 2 buddies that are actually characters, but then you've also got several other, like, security guys with them. one of which played knockoff Bane on Batwoman, and so I found that just kind of funny to see. Hey, there he is! Like, but so they introduce another group of characters. This time they're from Oakland, and it's husband, wife, and their, I think, 2 daughters. And they're like in their house, they're rationing food, they're down to their last like half a pickle, and ramen noodles, which it's like, if you're down to that point, then like, yeah, that implies that you've been there for quite a while, which, considering that, yeah, the end of the movie is just a month out from the apocalypse, it's like, damn, I guess you guys like really didn't ration food until that day, I guess, because like, that's because they've been staying outside of the rich guy's house because they have to leave their house, because they hear like the neighbors is getting robbed. And so they basically go, and they, like, somehow the husband knows the guy who owns the homestead, and so he's trying to tell him that, like, hey, look, let us in, like, please, like, just give us some food, you know, you've got so much. And they're like, no, like, sorry, but like, I need to take care of my family. So that's a subplot that really doesn't go anywhere. It gets resolved just right at the end when they say that, like, oh yeah, well, then the wife made a whole bunch of bread and she gave it to them because we made greenhouses, and like, they can produce potatoes that we can make bread out of. And I don't know, to me it was really funny, some of the like the brand like deals that they must have cut, that, or maybe they just included logos and didn't like really think about it, where the greenhouses that they say security guy's wife like made for them in this post-apocalypse, they've all got like this really large company logo like printed on the front of them, and it's like, oh yeah, I'm sure that was really important to her to like put that company logo on there. And like one of the security guys, I thought it was really funny, he like turns around to go walk somewhere, and he's just got oddly placed, like it's above the top of his backpack, but below his neck, he's got a Black Rifle Coffee logo, which I don't know, I find amusing just because I know that the production studio, that they're a couple of Mormon guys, and so they don't want like all these messages in film that they think are bad. But yeah, it's like, oh, well, coffee, well, we're gonna put that in there because they paid us, and you know, most of the world doesn't have a problem with coffee, that's just Mormons. So it's like, okay, whatever. But, and then they also have the NPS store, which was probably the weirdest one, where security man and his family, they go to the NPS store before going to the homestead because she needs to pick up medication for one of her kids. And it's like, I wouldn't check or like chance my bets going to the NPS store, because for those of you who might not know, the NPS store is basically, it's a bulk lot or damaged goods store, where basically if something falls off a truck, then the NPS store will buy it and they sell it for a significantly discounted price. So their inventory is never stable. Like, don't get me wrong, they do have a lot of different like medication products there, but I don't, if it was an apocalypse situation and I needed a specific medicine, I'm not running into the NPS store that's currently being looted hoping that I can find a specific medication. It's like, no, I'm going to somewhere where that's like kept regularly in stock. But so yeah, and then a lot of the movie is just these different groups all staying at the homestead. Like there's really a lot of the movie is just, hey, look, here are different characters. And I think, maybe maybe the TV show is super fantastic, but I wouldn't know. And I think that's kind of a problem, that it's like, oh, well, so is that your like selling point? That, the TV show is probably great, go watch it. It's like, well, okay, but I I'm here watching your movie. And I don't know, it's just it's like they do, the main plot I suppose they have is security guy's son decides that he wants to take a more active role to try and like help solidify his family's position at the homestead. And so they give him guard duty on the back of the property. And it's super weird because they have him and another guy in like one of those like camouflage sniper tents that's like meant to blend into the hillside. And it's like, well, no, if you're like, because they also give them a megaphone and they tell them that like, hey, don't shoot people first, like tell them that they're trespassing, and if they don't like leave then like that's when we consider shooting them. And it's like, well, so wouldn't you want them like up in a tower or like make their position pretty like clearly known, that like, hey, just like, because otherwise it's like it just looks like a mountainside, because you can't really see the property from where they're at. So they like find a couple hunters, and one of the hunters sees something like reflecting, and so he looks through the scope of his gun at the like two kids that are doing guard duty, and they're like radioing in about like, oh, we got a couple hunters here, they've got scopes on us, like what do you want us to do? And the one guy tries, quote unquote, to use the megaphone, but like you can see his hand shaking on and off of the button on like the little controller on the microphone, and so like he's not able to get a message through. And that is another one of those really like kind of lazy things where it's like, really guys, like, his mouth is covered by the megaphone, like, don't have to have him toggle the button, just don't have him say anything, and then just do it in post. Like, you don't have to, like, why would you make it look worse when you could do it, like, sure, it's not as easy as, yeah, we'll just film it and then cut it together. Like, yeah, you do have to do a little bit of post-production, but, like, that's okay. You're making a movie. Like, you should be okay with the idea of doing a little post-production. But so he can't do that, and so then they tell the kid to fire a warning shot. He does that, and nobody reacts to it, which is really funny, because it's like, well, no, it's a gunshot. Like, it would be really loud, like, especially, like, up there, where it's like, oh yeah, so it's just gonna echo. And then he's like, oh, they're still pointing the scopes at us, like, what do we do? The dad is like, shoot him, do it now, kill him. He cut off your arm, Anakin. And so then the kid like shoots the guy, and that shot everyone hears, and like they show all the different characters around the homestead all reacting to gunfire, and it's like, well, no, they all would have reacted to the first one. Like, guys, like, gunshots are pretty loud. Like, especially because, I don't know, I guess maybe that area of North Salt Lake, probably not, but I know along that ridge up there in Bountiful, there's a gun range, an outdoor gun range up there, and you can hear those shots, you know, quite a ways away, just down in like the suburbs and stuff. Like, they're not super loud, you know, you don't need hearing protection, but you can hear them, like, you know, when someone's at the shooting range. But yeah, and then they kind of try and go into the question of like, oh, was that self-defense, or did he just murder a guy? Which it's like, it seems pretty clear that the answer is he just murdered a guy. Because like, if he did not make himself present in any way, other than potentially a warning shot, it's like, yeah, no, like, that's pretty clear murder. Like, you can't just shoot someone. And like, especially if it's not a post-apocalyptic situation, because like, then you don't really have the justification of, well, he was going to steal from us. Especially because it seems like they were just straight up hunters. And so like, the only place that plot really goes to is later. Security guy's kid goes to Homestead guy's daughter, and he's like, I feel really bad about what I did. Also, like, you're really hot, and we're the two, like, young adult characters, so, you know, maybe we should form a relationship now, because we're like an hour or so into the movie, and we need something to happen. And she's like, oh, that's really great, but before we do all that, let me teach you how to pray. And she like extensively goes through and explains how prayer works. And it's like, look, like, I get it, you know, I was raised Mormon, I'm not anymore, like, you know, I'm not religious, but it's like, come on, man, like, I know you're trying to spread your message, but that just seems condescending. Like, everyone knows what a prayer is. Everyone knows how a prayer works, like, functionally. Like, you know, like, that's not, you don't need to dedicate 5 minutes out of your movie to, like, oh, yeah, this is what a prayer is. It's like, that's really lame. But yeah, and then the only other real, like, thing that kind of caught me off guard was right near the end, when they have the SWAT team show up. tensions are raised, and then eventually they like start having a whole bunch of like gunfire go off and stuff. But most of the guns, they did not put a muzzle flash effect on them. And it's like, Jesus Christ, guys, like that's, like that's really, really simple. Like that, like just fucking like go on to YouTube, download one off of a green screen and then key it out. Like, like that would look better than nothing. And so it's another one of those, like, I wouldn't honestly be surprised if they said that, like, oh yeah, most of the effects are in camera, because it's like, well, yeah, I don't think that you really added, like, there's a couple here and there, but I don't think you actually added a whole lot. But yeah, overall, I wouldn't recommend it. Maybe the series is really good and like helps the movie flow better. Like maybe it is better once you've like seen the show to go back and watch the movie, but it just really feels like maybe a lot of these characters that are in the show that don't really get focused on in the movie, maybe we could do like flashbacks in the show to show like what happened in the movie and just cut them out of the movie because they're not important. And it is weird just how many times they keep trying to like reinforce that like no, society is still running. And it's like, but you want this to be a post-apocalyptic story. Like you keep insisting on that, but then you keep giving us information where like they have Homestead guy's sister's husband eventually shows up, and he says that, oh well, I went from LA to Vegas, and then to here, which I thought was really funny because it's like, well, here could either be actually in the Rockies, in like North Salt Lake area, or it could be in Oakland, where they keep like saying they are. And he says that FEMA's coming through there and then going up to Boise, which it's like, well, so again, that probably feels like, Salt Lake, North Salt Lake area. But like, he mentions that like, oh yeah, Vegas was like up and active. Like, he spent a while in the casinos and stuff and bought like a High Art Vegas shirt. And it's like, oh, okay. Like, like it again, why tell me that like, oh, so security man's just an idiot? Like, like if Vegas is up and running, like I'm pretty sure that everything's fine. Like, I really kind of doubt that in a post-apocalypse that like the casinos would still just be running. Feel like, nah, it's fine. Eventually we'll run out of alcohol and stuff, but it's fine as long as we can get some of their money. Like, and so yeah, I just overall I wouldn't recommend it, and I support the idea of Angel Studio. Like, I like the idea that they've taken a lot of their money that they made with Sound of Freedom and they're like actually investing it into making more projects, and and it's like, cool, good for you. But we've unfortunately seen this before, where you'll get some alternative studio that, I'm not gonna make the movies that Hollywood makes. Like, I'm gonna make the movies that you and your family actually want to go to. And then it's like, oh yeah, but these are shit. Like you're just pumping out movies and like they're not very good. Like, so, like let's not do that, because it basically just puts you in the same boat that Hollywood is in, where it's like, oh, okay, yeah, so you're just gonna make movies, but instead of me learning about fucking gender reassignment surgery in Amelia Perez, I'm gonna learn about prayer in Homestead. Great. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend the movie. So those are my somewhat brief thoughts on Homestead. I'm a little under the weather, as you can probably tell, but I hope you enjoyed regardless. Thank you for being patient and finishing the B.T.F.O if you got here, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.